I loved what you sent me. There was a suit that, or two suits. One was a cord suit. One was a high twist of some kind. I can't remember now. And I was super into it. And but I want to talk about the product stuff a little bit later. But first, I just wanted to ask, 10 years ago, as I think with the first time I heard your name, David Coggins came through Cincinnati on a tour promoting his book. I think it's called Men in Style at that time.
Oh,
And he
nice.
came to the yeah, there's this historic library called the Mercantile Library, and there's a local menswear store that has long since gone out of business, unfortunately, that invited him. So we had bourbon, of course, being Cincinnati. And he mentioned that he was on this trip through the Highlands and he stopped in this tweed shop and he got some tweed. And then he just kind of casually said, and then I had my friend Jake make it for me into a suit, or I can't remember what he had it made into at the time. So that was the first time I heard of you, and I thought, oh, that's interesting. And the way he said it made me think it was just like a buddy of his who happens to make suits, which I guess is true. So, but since then, of course, like you're everywhere, and it's been really cool to see you kind of become much more of a household name, I guess, is one way to say it. So, what's kind of like your just briefly, like kind of what's your history, as a tailor and then as a business as you've grown here? Can you just give us like a kind of a brief recap of how you got started and how you've gotten to where
Quick
you are today?
recap. Quick recap on how I got started. I studied menswear at FIT.
Okay.
In the beginning, I had a business partner. We started making suits for our friends and acquaintances, not with a strong business plan at hand, but just an idea that we wanted to start making some clothes for fun. That quickly kind of became friends, became acquaintances, acquaintances became strangers, and that became kind of like a burgeoning business. And this idea that maybe we should make a go at this and see if this could be a way of actually earning a living. And it quickly did. We did a pop-up shop, and then we did our own shop. And it's been kind of a don't look back and just kind of keep doing the things that I like doing, which is making custom clothing. That's maybe the 30 seconds of what the last kind of 15 years of my life have looked like, but that kind of sums it up.
That's great. So you at first, you said to make a living out of it. Were you kind of moonlighting in the same at the same time, or were you still just able
Yeah,
to kind of scrape by?
I was working different jobs. So I was, I had been, I had, I had bartended, I had DJ'd, I had kind of club promoted. So I was doing kind of nightlife stuff in New York, which is, I was also worked part time at a record shop, kind of all good things to do in your early 20s in New York,
Yeah,
early to mid
fantastic.
20s.
Yeah,
And then
yeah,
traveled in
awesome.
my late 20s. It became time to, figure things out. And that's kind of when I started the business.
Yeah, cool. So when he said that my friend was made me a suit, maybe was that maybe you think about the time that you were just like you said, making for friends, and then friends became
No, I
acquaintances.
mean, at that point, I was pretty like established because David and I, this is about 10 years ago. We're
Yeah,
on or almost 10 years now, something like that. I forget the exact time. I mean, it
maybe it
depends
was.
which.
Yeah,
Anyway, David and I were on we did a trip to the Outer Hebrides together with Matt
right.
Hranick. It was fun being back there, kind of, and which is funny. I was thinking about it, and we were just driving down this little road. We were visiting bigger mills, and we kind of found this small independent weaver. And Hranick was like, "What is that?" I was like, "Pull over." And he like goes kind of flying off the side of the road, pulls in this place. We go in the back, and it's this an independent weaver. I guess the guy. I met these women last week when I was in Scotland who worked for Harris Tweed Hebrides, and I was saying, "Oh, on my first trip, I met this guy Norman Mackenzie. Like, is he still around?" And they said, "No, unfortunately, he'd passed away." I mean, this guy was in his late 70s when we met him almost 10 years ago, and I guess he was a retired dentist that had just gotten into love of tweed and become an independent
Cool.
weaver. And so this was just like his kind of loom shed that we found ourselves in, and we were like kids in a candy shop just kind of grabbing different tweeds. And these aren't like completely different than what you might find but in a standard Harris Tweed boat. But there's not a ton. Most of the stuff that comes out of Harris Tweed only comes out of a few different mills. So it was really fun to
Hmm.
get one of these. These were Norman's kind of personal favorites. Norman would go out and he would get the yarns and he would sit there and just kind of like just pick everything himself and do a bolt of fabric, and then you get it washed and finished over at one of the bigger mills. Like they do that for the solo weavers, and it gets brought back, and he would sell it to kind of tweed hungry tourists like ourselves.
That's amazing.
But so that was kind of that was part of the story that so at that point I was becoming established. It was not maybe but that's a very David way of describing things.
Right, totally. Well, I
I
mean,
think he
it
still does
was,
that. He still is like, oh, I'll just have my friend Jake make it.
yeah, I mean, if you have a
And he
friend who can make you custom clothes, obviously, like
and
that's
he
what you do.
constantly will be like, hey, I found this amazing fabric when I was out at this place, or I was at Campbell's of Bewley. Can I just send it? Now a lot of my construction is done in Italy, and he'll be like, can he just send it straight to the workshop? I'm like, absolutely, send it straight to the workshop. Like, they'll
That's
know what to do.
fantastic.
Just put David Coggins on it.
Yeah, that's great. And once you have a pattern, it's so much easier than,
Makes
trying to
things pretty
hunt
easy.
around. Yes. Oh man. Cool. Okay. Well, okay. So let's transition now. I want to talk about these suits that you sent me. A couple of things that I wanted to note. Number one, and I was talking to our mutual friend Joshua about it a little bit. He and I were texting about it, and um, the first thing that stuck out to me, number one, were two details. One was on the navy suit. The pants definitely had a kind of an almost, not quite, but almost flared leg. And the other detail was the jacket had a really deep back vent, both of which kind of evoked kind of a 70s feel to me, which I feel like is a aesthetic that for a while I've thought I want to play with more a little bit, because I think especially pants like cut that way are a little bit more like can be really flattering on the right guy. So is that kind of like your house style? Because I also noticed
Yeah.
the cord jacket and suit was different. That was not cut that way.
So they're actually cut quite similarly. Like if you were going to go through and the measurements are very similar. There's a
Okay.
slight variation, but the way that corduroy wears, it just drapes so differently, so you
Right.
don't get the same kind of like kick at the bottom. But I believe that they're kind of similar within a quarter of an inch, centimeter or
Okay.
so. But they're kind of it's the same block, but we make certain tweaks when we're doing a corduroy opposed to a plain weave or a wool.
Okay.
But yeah, both those are kind of that house style, house block. I think that there's a certain kind of 70s leaning to it. It's not wholly that. I mean, what you're seeing, it's not actually a boot cut trouser, but it's a very straight leg. There's actually some taper. I mean,
Yes.
it is smaller at the bottom than it is at the knee, but
Yes.
only very marginally. And so what
I mar
happens is when you
I
get that,
measured
you
it
get
so
this
that
slightly,
I took
yeah.
measurements so for my own like future like if I did, as I'm like looking at things and trying to find I took those measurements, so I did notice that. So it's like it's just like a hint of it is kind of
Yeah, that's my
compared
thing.
to
We
the
don't need to go
super
all
taper
in.
that we've seen.
Yeah, I think
Go
just
ahead.
kind of straightening out. I mean, a lot of the inspiration that we have with this stuff is coming from old jeans, to be honest. Like we're
Okay.
going for some of that kind of like that 501, a little bit straighter, a little bit higher rise, probably higher than the 501, but like kind of evoking some of that, and then bringing it into our tailoring.
Cool. Yeah, it's very cool. It's very flattering. Um, and that is your default. So for your ready to wear, this is a Waverly line that you said. So that would odd trousers or separates that you would have also be in that same kind of
Most
basic
stuff
fit?
in our core tailoring line would be considered a Waverly. We also have our Campagna, but that's our totally unstructured. Sometimes we do a Campagna suit, but most of the Campagnas are jackets, and they're kind of based on this like very Neapolitan style, where it's totally structureless, um, like jacket. And even our Waverly, we're using a full canvas garment, but it's a soft canvas,
Right.
soft shoulder, but
Yeah.
it's got also higher level construction, hand sewn buttonholes, lapels, details, where the Campagna is a little bit more streamlined, a little bit more, as a little bit, it's got a few nice hand touches, but it's more of a machine made garment. The Waverly really has kind of an impressive amount of handwork. And then our third, which we don't offer any ready to wear in, is our Mayfair, which is like our kind of bespoke, like bench made tailoring, which is
Okay.
much more built up, much more English in nature.
Yes. I was going to actually ask you about the hand details, so that you mentioned that. What are the kind of the hallmarks that you guys go for at the Waverly?
Um, with that, you're seeing, all of the outside stitches from the buttonholes, pick stitching being done by hand, the, the armholes, the undercollar, the like the sleeve joinings, the hems, all of those kind of internal areas being done by hand. Most of the kind of most kind of exterior and the beginning of the interior would be done by hand. The places where you're going to see machine work is going to be on the like we're not using a handmade canvas. It's machine made canvas, and there's some of it is set by hand, some of it's set by machine in terms of the pad stitching. So it's
Okay,
but other than that, it's kind of like I said, it's a lot of hand work for a for for a kind of a ready to wear garment.
totally. Yeah, and you can tell those details like the like buttonholes and stuff. You can tell. And like if there's pick stitching visible, like that's the dead giveaway. I feel like that's always the dead giveaway. Um,
Yeah, the
I was
difference between
gonna,
an AMF machine and a real hand done pick stitch,
uh-huh,
and the bar
yeah,
tacking being done by hand, all of that stuff around the pockets, and then we'd also you'll see some bar tacking on the vents and bar tacking, all that kind of stuff.
yeah, yeah. Okay, I have kind of a nerd question. This is kind of honestly, it's funny because this is my last question. I didn't plan to finish up with this, but I have this question about you being a tailor, the shape of armholes. I kind of like, I feel like there's an Italian way of making armholes. Maybe it's more oval, or rounded, I guess. And then there's like kind of an American style where it's kind of more like egg shaped or oval. Um, is that maybe a gross oversimplification? But I just feel like there's a difference, and I can't really go back. Once I've tried sort of like the Italian style, which is more rounded, I just try on American jackets, and I can't stand it. Um, can you talk? Can you help me out, like understanding that at all? And like,
I mean, I think that
how is
it's
yours
less
designed?
about I mean, ours is more rounded. It's a higher armhole. I think that the real core of that is the height of the armhole, and
Right.
it's about with your kind of standard ready to wear in American tailoring, you're going to have a lower armhole,
Yeah.
whereas good kind of like Savile Row style tailoring and good Italian tailoring, it's just and also just good handmade tailoring is generally going to have rounder, higher armhole.
Okay. Is there a benefit to a rounder shape versus kind of a more oval shape?
I don't. I think it's more the symptom of when it's smaller. I think it tends to be more you go in with a rounder armhole,
That makes
and
sense.
when it's
I
a kind
see.
of lower, it becomes this more kind of egg shape. But I've
Uh-huh.
seen really interesting, like kind of some Savile Row ones that are more like they go really like high. It's like there's like a million different ways to nuance this, and I think that like you'll find like I think if this were to go on some like you could argue and everyone's going to have like a lot of different ways. You're going to have like I don't think that there's like an answer like well circular armhole more circular one's going to be more comfortable, and of course you're going to
Right.
have a wider one depending on the kind of like width of their of their arms. You're going to like things are going to change kind of based on the
Yeah.
person's like body type, but in general I just think that what most people are reacting to is just having a kind of a higher tighter armhole is what feels kind of nice and different.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I appreciate you helping me because there's like a internet type of internet menswear enthusiast who kind of gets, taught by the internet and then having zero, pattern making experience of my own. I like to ask to clear up some of these things in my own brain because otherwise it's easy to just sort of like make assumptions. So, um, anyway, cool. Very cool. Is there anything cool coming up that you want to tip people off about, or, anything that you're excited about coming up that you're going to be doing?
You know, I I'm excited every year for what the next year has to offer. I think for us right now, big excitement is we're doing ready to wear, which just gives us a whole new audience and a new approach. It's giving us a lot of creative freedom. We're being able to develop more and more of our own fabrics as we come into our fall winter 25, and I'll hopefully get to show you that in in Florence in January. I don't know if you'll be
Okay.
there. If you are, it'd be great to show you. Otherwise, I'll if you're in
Yeah, I'll
Chicago
plan to
or
be
any of the
there.
other places where we'll be showing. I would be happy to share the collection, but you'll see a lot more of the fabrics that are outside of the things that you find in most custom tailor shops. A lot of solo, a lot of developments, things that are proprietary. So that's a big, kind of exciting move for us. We're also doing a lot more outerwear, so more from kind of bloussons and bombers and things like that, and different
That's
styles of
cool.
top coats and field jackets. So those are all kind of new developments that kind of certainly keep me creatively stimulated.
That's fantastic. Do you are you the primary designer behind all those things and as you
Yeah,
develop
we
these
were
ready to wear?
our team consists kind of, we have Colin, who I don't know if you know Colin, fellow Cincy
Yeah,
man. Colin's kind of like he's really helps day to day on the design. Matthew's creative director, myself kind of, I don't know, juggling lots of different things. So the three of us, it's kind of a trifecta there. Are
cool.
kind of bringing all these designs together.
Fantastic. Awesome. Well, I won't take any more of your time, Jake, but thank you so much for the time. Thanks for sending me the stuff. And yeah, I'll see you in January. So yeah, let me know what's happening.
Cool. Look forward to it. Thanks again, man. We'll
All
we'll
right.
talk soon.
Yeah, take care.